If we don't get attendees, I'm going to be pissed.
Let's have a look. Hello and welcome to our webinar. Thank you very much for joining. We're just going to hold on 1 or 2 more minutes. I can see a couple of people still trying to log in. So I'll be with you all in 2 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much once again for everybody coming on board. I know that there's been a couple of changes in the way that people are working, especially the shift to working from home. And it's probably why we've got such a large attendance today, to be honest with you. Well, look, it's an absolute pleasure. And I'm going to go through, I guess, not only the Toyota Financial Services in New Zealand loan processing current and future state, but also talk a little bit about Ephesoft and our work in the financial services, insurance, and also within just the wealth management and banking spaces as well. So, with that said, this is typically going to be a webinar about the transformation of origination and its impact on customer experience. We'll also be discussing a little bit about how the increase in customer experience also benefits the bottom line for a lot of these organizations. Now I'm going to go through a pretty standard agenda for today. I'll start off with a couple of really quick introductions as to who will be providing you with the content. Then we're going to talk who Toyota Financial Services in New Zealand actually is and what were the market pressures and catalysts for change that drove their lean transformation. Now we're going to sum all that up with a fantastic live demonstration by our solutions engineer, Chris Mahoney, and then we'll go into a really brief summary and we'll allow some questions at the end. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand, ask a question in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to it either through the content or we'll answer it at the end of the session. Now, my name's Amici. I'm the commercial sales manager for Australia and New Zealand. I've got around 10 years of banking and financial services experience, 5 years in the software and software sales space. And my real focus for today, but also the interaction, is to identify a lot of those manual processes within an organization that we can help automate and increase the productivity, maybe reduce the errors, and ultimately deliver a better customer experience for more revenue. Christopher Mahoney, he's a regional solution architect, and he's actually the mastermind behind the proof of concept that was built for Toyota Financial Services. He has a really deep understanding of not only capture, but also workflow and business transformation, identifying friction points and delivering streamlined processes for organizations, not only within financial services, but also within other industries like construction, healthcare, and many, many others. Now, if we look at Toyota Financial Services, I mean, Toyota Financial Services is a wholly owned subsidiary of Toyota Motor Corporation. The interesting thing is that even though Toyota is Japanese, Toyota Financial Services actually commenced its operations in Sydney back in 1982. Now, that's over around 30 years, but in the last 20, they've had rapid expansion and are now covering more than 35 countries and regions. Specifically in New Zealand, their growing dealer network across New Zealand is delivering double the volume of their closest competitor. And in addition to just new vehicle sales, they're actually providing a wide variety of financial services to their growing network of dealers, such as retail, commercial sales. They're also doing novated and employee leasing, and they're also providing business loans and marine finance. Now, with that said, being leaders in the industry, what were the catalysts for change? Now, firstly, their revenue is actually directly tied to the dealer sales. And the global economic slowdown is really driving lean transformation agendas and productivity improvements to enable more scalable operations. Secondly, finance is becoming an increasingly competitive marketplace. And because Toyota Financial Services doesn't have any control over how Toyota dealers source financing for their customers, they had to compete on experience and that brand recognition. Now, then we look at our time to approval. Now, copious numbers of analyst reports indicate that time to approval is critical for accelerating growth in today's stagnant market, and that increased regulatory burdens are prompting the need for streamlined and frictionless processing. And then finally, with digitally empowered customers doing more research online, they actually needed to look at ways to tackle market disruption by creating demand and understanding more about their customers and which demographics that they should be targeting. We have a look at lean transformation. Why did they select Ephesoft with all of these changes in market dynamics, and what realistically was the end result? Well, the purpose of Transact is to support an automated document conversion. It also supports the categorization and data extraction in order to accelerate time to process and overcome expensive errors. Now, we use a combination of supervised machine learning and rules-based logic to achieve a high accuracy of extracted metadata and decrease the document-specific processing time by more than 80% for most of our customers. What I'm going to walk you through is how we ingest multiple document types, extract relevant data, and then output structured data for downstream processing within a loan origination system. But this could quite easily be through our out-of-the-box integration with RPA, an easy integration with case management via multiple different methods, or any workflow engine that we're either a technical partnership with or has open APIs. Now, specifically where we look within an organization to try and provide value and reduce friction points is areas where there are high volumes of documents. Now, whether they're physical, such as a mailroom, or whether they're digital, such as email or upload through a web portal, areas of high document flow are always excellent targets for automation. We also target areas of manual data entry. Anywhere in the organization where document data is manually entered into a system of record or document repository is a prime target. Even the smallest of opportunities can have a massive impact when spread out throughout multiple departments. Now, take the administrator who spends an hour every day keying in information from email attachments. If that's being done by 5, 10, 20 workers in an organization, the hours and inefficiency really add up. But as part of that, you've also got your manual sorting and document splitting. So the sorting and splitting of documents is a massive time waster. I mean, take, for example, a PDF that houses 3 documents. The time and effort to split, save, and rename, even at low volumes, can consume precious hours. And then the last portion of these of the areas we look at are areas of data or document verification. Because as documents and their associated data flow in, it can take specialized workers to ensure that the data is correct, to ensure proper data and validate that it's correct. Any errors that pass through to the end systems can be incredibly costly, especially within the financial services industry. So with the Ephesoft intelligent platform, there are a number of benefits that tie nicely into the core challenges of loan origination, but they can just as easily be applied to any document process for that matter. Now, we do this by capturing all of the documents through any channel, splitting them by document type, and intelligently extracting relevant data based on your business rules. Now, if there are any exceptions, we simply flag them for a validator before delivering the contextual data for processing downstream. The beauty of having all of this done in one screen without manual documents is that there are some really obvious benefits. I mean, firstly, we get a massive increase in productivity. The ability to do more with less can increase the volume of loan packages processed. It can save time of processing, but it also adds velocity because more customers are coming through the organization. We get a huge reduction in errors. I mean, by reducing keystrokes and having a staff member validate rather than transcribe, fraud and human error are drastically reduced. And then if we look at the conversion rate and the customer experience, they also increase. A smooth process positively impacts on an organization's reputation and the company's performance. I mean, as a proof point, research by KPMG indicated that when compared to their peers, lenders who invested in the digital transformation of loan processing experienced up to 10 times more growth. So why don't we dive into Toyota Financial Services specific loan origination process. We're going to walk through and I'm going to identify all the different players and what roles and what processes they had to play. Then after that, I'm going to give you a very simple representation of how we transformed and what the future state of their loan origination process will look like just before we dive into a demonstration by the regional solutions manager architect, Chris Mahoney. Now, just imagine that you're the individual who's just purchased their vehicle. It's a fantastic moment and an opportunity for any brand to really provide an ongoing customer support service in providing them finance for that brand new vehicle. So I'm the customer, I'm sitting in the dealer, and I'm going to fill out all of the application form. I'm going to fill out all of the fields in the application form. And then there's going to be a checklist of documents that are required to do my KYC, AML, CTF. But all this needs to be entered into a system of record once we've collected everything that's required for a decision to be made. Now, the dealer is going to get these documents. They're going to scan and then scan them into a loan package and email them through to a back office assessment team. The assessment team is going to manually classify these documents. Do I have my driver's license, the application, a utility bill, for example? And it's at this point that they're going to be looking and marking off their checklist, and they identify that the utility bill is either incorrect and maybe they need an additional proof of address from the customer. So they're going to go back to the dealer who receives a notification either via email or a web portal, and they need to reach back to the customer and ask for those additional documents. So the customer is either still in the dealership or is left by now and is simply getting a phone call and manages to download a more recent proof of address, or maybe they scan one in from home. But that actually needs to go back to the dealer. The finance manager is going to receive that email and then forward it through to the assessment staff for an additional approval. The assessment staff is going to look at that new document, complete the checklist, and manually key in the data into their loan origination system and approve the loan, hopefully. Now, let's just say that customer gets an approval. They now receive a direct debit and a finance agreement, which is then sent back to the assessment team to do more data entry and more physical document splitting. Now, if we compare that to what we're about to show you, the future state of Toyota Financial Services loan processing workflow from this cumbersome, manual and repetitive process into a streamlined, real-time and frictionless origination process that really reduces the time to yes and, more importantly, protects their value chain. Not only that, but with the reduced amount of touch time within this process, they can even double the volume that they're going to see over the next 6, 12, 18 months. And with that, I'm going to break and allow Chris to take over and walk you through his POC.
Thank you, Mate. Please allow me a moment to share my desktop and then I'll get started. Excellent. Look, thank you very much, Mate, for giving a very detailed explanation of the process over at Toyota Financial Services. And thank you to all the attendees that chose to join today. So look, I'm going to touch on a few areas here where we saw introducing some efficiencies into Toyota's processes. So a little bit of background, the dealer channel was capturing different documents from customers. And I'll give you an example of some of these documents. As you can see here, there's certain banking related documents in regards to bank accounts. There's also privacy and consent forms. And there's a range of other forms that require a signature at the time of finance being applied for. And I've actually gone through this process myself here locally with Toyota when purchasing a new car. So I understand how much documentation is handed across the table that I have to actually sign. That finance manager will then have to collate that documentation, submit that to the head office, and then over a period of days, that documentation is then approved, specific checks are made, and then the happy path would be it's approved, and then my car's prepared for me to come and pick up. Some of the key areas that I saw were things like proof of identity, so things like licenses, pay slips, and some proof of address documentation are generally good things. So that's sort of a highlighting some of the documentation that the particular dealer channel was working with. So we proposed using a portal, such as you can see here. And it's actually simple in nature, where this could be essentially integrated into a range of different platforms that they're using. But we could go ahead, we could start to add in different components. Now, I'm just going to select all the documents in this particular instance. I'm going to go ahead and upload those. And I think one of the key areas that I would like to show here is that we currently have a range of applications that are in play. So you can see that there was one submitted yesterday, and we can see that we've returned all of the dealer supplied documentation, but we're awaiting some of the pay slips, the driver's license, and the proof of address documentation. Now we could introduce the ability for the customer to submit that via email, and provided they know their application number, that would slot right into this process and ensure that all those documents were captured successfully. I'm going to just move across back to my overall list, and the one that we're looking at today is 1011, and currently we don't have anything associated to this particular application. So what's taking place now? The documents have been submitted, they've been captured, and in the background at our head office, you can see that the documents are being processed. And again, this is all real time. So this process could turn into essentially a 5 or 10 minute process. And you can see all the different documentation here. So if I went in, for instance, I was in my back office, I was to open up my review validate screen, and I've chosen today to put everything into validation. In some cases, no one may need to even validate any of this documentation, being that the results are that accurate. But we're just going to have a look at some of the data we're capturing. So you can see here that it's rather comprehensive in regards to this particular form. It's capturing all types of data, including financial information, address and individual information. And I can move across and start to look at different information that I'm capturing from different sections of this particular form. And as I move through, we have a range of information. And last but not least, things like checkbox detection. So looking at different questionnaires. And this information is highly valuable. It gives Toyota an insight into their buyers and also their buying habits. And we've determined that this has been initialed, signed, and ready to go. So I can go ahead and I can validate that now. And we start to move through each different document. So in this particular instance here, we're just looking for a proof of address. So by highlighting that specific area, it allows the operator to take that information, update it if need be. And a neat feature we're doing here also, we're looking at just capturing things like an ABN, just to show some of the capabilities around APIs. So this is shooting off to the ASIC register to pick up some information. And it's a very useful tool when doing verification and validation of different information that we're extracting. So I'm going to go ahead. Just going to roll through each one of these. We've got a payslip here. We can start to apply different rules, such as does this fall within the previous 3 months of payslips? We chose to keep it rather simple here. We're just extracting the amount value, and that was all done using our machine learning algorithm. So that's sort of the back end process. Moving back to the dealer channel, as you can see, the dealer's getting a notification here to show what documents are actually being signed off or verified. And he can provide that information back to the customer, essentially whilst the customer's sitting there in front of him. So I'll go ahead and I'll validate each one of these documents. And you can see we're doing things like signature detection to ensure that we've got the correct information. We are doing some handwriting extraction also, just to capture different types of information. And we're looking for different items off each page. So I'm going to go through, and I believe last but not least, probably have the license. Oh, sorry, and my direct debit form. Great. Okay, so that was essentially the back office process. It was validation. There was some light verification in there, and we could put a lot more business rules in place to ensure that the data is correct and 100% accurate prior to being finalized. And if I move across back to my portal, you can see that the application has been received and now all the documents have been received. I could then take this a little bit further, move across to documents received, approve the application, and once the vehicle's been delivered, call the customer and then have him pick up his vehicle. They'll put the bow on the bonnet, and the customer drives off and is a very happy customer. So essentially that concludes the portal demonstration. Please feel free to ask questions. And I'm going to hand back over to Mach now, and he can carry on.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Look, I just want to say a quick thank you for that really insightful demonstration, Chris. I know you showed multiple layers, you showed an integration with the website, and more importantly as well, the ability to give real-time feedback to not only the dealer, but also the customer. I mean, by streamlining this process and giving real-time feedback, the customer and the dealer feel far more involved, understanding exactly where their loan package is in the process. And even if that customer isn't approved, if we provide them with a great customer experience, they're more likely to come back to us and maybe research alternative vehicles that they could purchase. Or at least when their circumstances change, they'll be able to come back and know that if they're looking for finance, that they don't need to go to maybe their bank or some sort of alternative finance lender before they get to the dealership. Now, hopefully you're all starting to see how this could potentially benefit your organization, your loan origination process, or you're starting to formulate some questions around the solution and maybe just the partnership model. It's really interesting because the strength of our platform and the reason why Toyota Financial Services partner with us or Ephesoft is because our platform can scale across multiple use cases, business units, and even industries. I mean, it's not an isolated case of delivering a faster onboarding process. Time and time again, our customers report improved accuracy, lower overall touch time with documents, greater decision consistency, and higher capacity across entire teams. And those teams can now spend more time with the customers, maybe more time supporting the channel, and ultimately generating more value for the organization and potentially even themselves. A great example of this outside of Toyota Financial Services is MTF Finance. Similar size organization that we're looking at loan origination and invoice processing. And what they looked to do with Ephesoft is actually partner across multiple processes. One of which was the corporate loans for their auto financing, where we also captured, classified, and extracted metadata. The difference with Toyota and MTF was that they were already leveraging an invoice processing solution that they were trying to get to expand and scale across an additional unit. Now, unfortunately, after about 18 months, it still wasn't working. And so what they looked for was another more intelligent solution that leveraged key value extraction rather than templates to really shorten that implementation time. And they discovered that Ephesoft could not only go from our first conversation, but also within 6 weeks, have a fully operational platform that streamlined their onboarding processes as well. So with that, they're also experiencing a fully automated solution that's improving the internal efficiency, the decision accuracy, and the productivity of all of their staff and the dealers that refer them loans. Now, with that said, I know that at the moment, everyone's going through a lot of adjustments at the moment as they work from home and try to set up teams of people through VPNs or deploying laptops into multiple regional locations. So we wanted to keep this very short, brief, and to the point. And it's at this point that I really want to open up the floor for any questions about what you've seen today, what's how it could maybe benefit your organization. How would you get in touch with a consultant or a partner about uncovering whether this is an opportunity for process improvement within your organization? Okay, I can see 1 or 2 people actually typing away. So I'm just going to give them another 30 seconds. Hopefully they can get the question in shortly. Okay, so I do have one question here, and that's really, what is one of the challenges that you faced when implementing and handling variations? Well, that's a really good question. One of the strengths of the Ephesoft platform is our classification engine. Now, as you're probably all aware, organizations will go through iterative processes with their applications. They'll also receive a wide scope of, say, proof of address documents. You can have up to 40 different variations of a utility bill, for example. Now, with our classification engine, we only require between 5 to 10 different samples to be able to accurately classify at 80% or higher. And as the humans, as some of the assessment staff actually validate documents, they're adding into the machine learning algorithm so that over time it becomes more and more accurate. Now, because we're leveraging business rules to identify the fields that we're extracting, it means that it rapidly reduces the implementation time, but also the cost and time to value. Hopefully that answers your question. And look, okay, so I can't see any more questions coming through on the chat. So just want to let everybody know that I'm very thankful, and hopefully Chris is as well, that you've taken the time to spend with us, learn a little bit more about what's going on in the financial services space, and hopefully opened your eyes to the potential for process automation within your organization. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to just shoot me an email, give me a call on my mobile. If you're in New Zealand, just add a +61 and drop off the 0. Or send me a text message, and I'll be more than happy to set up some time to have a chat and share some more insights on the project. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and please stay safe, stay at home.